Welcome back to another episode of Grieving and Growing with Lakeisha Rawls and Denisha Rawls Smith. We are continuing our conversation with Miss Melissa Waller, who's discussing how you pursue purpose while grieving.
What does that feel like? And she said, well, how about think about it like this? Are you looking at who's not there, or are you looking at who is there? Because you got some cheerleaders.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have cheerleaders that will be there for you, but it's your choice to focus on who's not there versus who is.
Mhm.
Every day, is it sunshines and rainbows?
Mhm.
But I often tell myself I have a choice. You know, I have a choice. Like, you can I can get May is hard. May
Mhm.
is extremely hard. And it's been hard because my grandmother was so spoiled. We celebrated her birthday the whole month. First of all, everybody was going to be responsible for something, right? Because she was on the mother's board. So, okay, Melissa, you're in charge of my hat. I want your, her favorite store was Added Dimensions. And it went from Added Dimensions to Catherine's. So and so, I want this. Your uncle's gonna buy me these two suits. You're in charge of this hat. She designated it. So Sunday, she was gonna be sharp all 4 Sundays in the month of May.
Okay. I love it. I'm not mad.
And like it was just like she didn't feel she was really one of those people that felt like my birthday is all month. I don't care, and as a family, we have been doing it like that for so long.
Mm-hmm.
That I was grown. Let me tell you something. My grandmother and her sister had the same birthday, and I didn't figure it out until my aunt passed. I never knew because my grandmother's sister was just so calm, and she would just come over and do stuff. She never made a big deal out of it. But May is a struggle, and your body will tell you when something is going on. I couldn't figure out in January. Like, I was like, oh, I got a headache. I don't know what's going on. Da, da, da. Went through the day. And I hadn't heard from anybody in my family. And so I called my sister the next day and I was like, what's going on with you? I ain't heard from you. What's up? Like, I said, I had the worst headache yesterday. And she said, yesterday is the day that Granny passed. Mm-hmm. But my coping mechanism is I just keep myself busy. Mm-hmm. So I don't even think about what day it is. I'm just working, working, working. And that's what ended up happening. Like I missed it. Everybody in my family is different. They all have their different journey, their different story, because she was all of our friends. And so we have had to kind of figure it out. Mm-hmm. But for me, you know, the focus, I had to be vulnerable and let people know, hey, I need to finish this dissertation. Mm-hmm. I need to finish this dissertation. So I have people that call me or will send texts. I have a friend I was sharing with Keisha, that a friend from college, he and his wife, they both on the team. He calls, he don't even care. He calls, doesn't matter what time, what you doing, where you at. Okay, what's going on? Your main priority is God, yourself, Milan, dissertation, that order. Everything else. So, one of my dissertation committee members, because after my chair passed, I had to go and get another chair. Mm-hmm. Well, I had been with this man for 7 years. He was with me in the master's program over the doctor program. And I ended up getting his best friend. And it's not the same. He loves me to pieces, mm-hmm. and he knows my story and all of that. And he has been a champion for me, but it's definitely different. The more I write, I can feel my heart fluttering sometimes because mm-hmm. I know it's coming up. Mm-hmm. However, I have people to say, just breathe. Like, mm-hmm. we're going to breathe through this and you're going to finish it. I was recently awarded a scholarship, so I don't have a reason not to finish. It's a full ride, you know? Mm-hmm. And I wrote about him. and I wrote about what he meant to me and what I want to do my research on. Mm-hmm. And that has really helped in that growth period, because you remember it's compound grief. So I'm healing from one thing. Grief isn't linear. Yeah, it isn't linear. So sometimes you're at the different stages, and so I've healed from this. I feel like I'm healing from this. Now I have to learn how to walk, talk, write all over again, from COVID. I get through that. Then my chair passes, and then that causes my body to have just the stress from the grief causes my body to go into shock. So now, I'm trying to study and trying to heal and trying to parent and trying to balance it all.
Yeah.
So in finding that balance, I always suggest to people, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but you got to have people in your circle that are really for you, that you can be transparent with. I'm very transparent. If it's not a good day, I will tell people, hey, I'm all right today. It's not my best, but what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to, have a facade. It is what it is, because it's a struggle, and I'm choosing me.
As you should.
Yes.
I choose a whole lot of people on a whole lot of other days. Mm-hmm. Even with my 13-year-old, I will tell her, hey, I'm not really having a good day today. Like, I need to kind of figure this out. Mommy got some stuff going on, and I really miss my grandmother. So whatever you're going to eat, figure it out. I need to get myself together. And she's like, okay, cool. But I always make sure I circle back. I circle back and zip it up like, hey, I was having a moment. Thank you for respecting the moment that I was having. Because what I want to teach her is it's okay to have a moment.
Absolutely.
Right. We've gotten into this thing where everybody posturing.
Right. Right.
And we've come out, and I was talking to my father, just how people are not really understanding, like emotional intelligence is at a all-time low.
All-time low. Yeah.
They just don't, the pandemic put us in a space where people didn't get time to grieve, and they didn't grieve properly. Like, they didn't have whatever traditional ceremonies they wanted, and things were happening, and everybody was anxious and communicating behind the screen. And, there were so many things going on that we just became just emotionally not in touch, like disconnected.
Yeah. Like
and so
we're numb.
Yeah.
Just continue to move forward. I see that a lot with the youth. I see that a lot with our youth. Like, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Oh, I'm so sorry they passed away. But they just, and then they're on to the next thing. It's like it doesn't always resonate with them.
Death and trauma has been so normalized. I think about, especially when you spoke about your grandmother and the alleged correlation with lead. I say it like you said it. And I see the youth in Flint that have been impacted by lead poisoning. And then they went through a pandemic on the backs of a water crisis. And so compound grief is a real thing. It's compound trauma over and over again. And then I think about, how hard the faith-based community was hit with the pandemic here in Flint, Detroit. And so you saw your leaders fall. The leaders in your family, the leaders in your church, the leaders in your community fail every day, over. And that's not just Flint, but this happened in Flint on the backs of a water crisis. And it is so ironic that we're talking about, this topic of the dissertation and grieving and not finishing it, because that's my story. That's my story. And that's my research, this water crisis and dealing with this pandemic on the backs of that. And you just really, it's so normalized. It's like they got to take a licking and keep on ticking, get up from there and let's go. Babies that don't even know how to cry. They don't know how to do anything but be destructive because they can't properly deal with their emotions. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. Emotional intelligence is at an all-time low, and trauma is at an all-time high from every angle. These babies, they can't read. They haven't been to school. And then they're expected to just do it. The teacher said, just do it. You should know this by now. You should know this by now. And so, and we're adults are treated the same way. You should be over this by now. You should be over this by now.
Oh yeah.
Let's go. Let's go. It's been a year. Let's go. It's been 7 years. Let's go. And that is because of a deficit in emotional intelligence. That is a deficit in compassion and empathy. And we are suffering through it. And we're spilling out on people because we have not done the work.
Those restorative practices.
Mm-hmm.
Restorative practices, and everybody wants to kind of put it in a box. And how my grandmother used to talk about it was that whole Joshua generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have these leaders that are going to rise up, but you have I am big on historical knowledge. Like I'm big on that. I feel like, if it wasn't broke, we're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
We can add to it, but there's a piece you have to, and again, one of the things that I'm big on is really people understanding the being in them, not the human being, that place in space, and understanding what it is to not just live well, but be well. You often hear me talk about posturing. That's one thing I'm not going to do. I'll tell you what it is. Either it is today or it's not. And it's not always going to be. That's just the truth of the matter, But I try to find gratitude in whatever it is that I am, wherever space I am. And when I say that, I mean there's a space in place of just expectation. And it often presents as, it can come off as elitism. People having various expectations. But let me tell you something. You can look even in Hollywood and see that when grief hits, it hits.
Yeah.
Those are things, we have to learn how to connect. And I always tell my students this. You got to learn how to connect to people on an emotional level. If you can't connect to them on an emotional level, you have an issue. That book can give you all kind of theories and philosophies. But if you can't identify, I'm not asking you will never know. I will never know what it feels like, what you feel like, but I can understand.
Right.
I understand sadness. I understand happiness. I understand joy. And that's what I'm saying. And I try when I'm dealing with people to really see, and for me, this is my space, the God in them, even at their worst. Because you don't know what people are going through. Like, you don't know. I watched someone, we have there in the school district that I'm employed with, one of the principals lost 3 relatives, mother, sister, another relative, all in the same day. Just very traumatic event. And people will say, "Oh, she's so mean." Well, I wouldn't expect her to be, honey and ice cream and sunshine every day. Like, that was traumatic. So where's the place where we can be empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate? Like, where do we give grace?
Right.
And so that is where, for me, my support system, my heroes in this journey of grief come in. People that can give me grace, people that can, and I started researching different people. My new dissertation chair and his wife, they lost their son Cody. He was young. They lost him to cancer, but they get up and they teach and they have had a counseling practice for years. How did they continue that bond? How did she move on? How did he grieve? Because they both grieve differently, and they have been able to share their grief process with me. I shared with you all my best friend. All of my best friends have lost a parent at a very early age. One of my best friends, she lost her, like I said, I remember the day she lost her mom. We were like 9 or 10. We were outside playing, and her mother told her to walk to her grandmother's house. She came down and gave her a hug and a kiss, and hugged her and kissed her. And we walked to the end of the block. I went to the left, she went to the right. And when I got to school on Monday, my friend told me that her mom had passed. So she was 10 years old. Then we went go on a college tour trip, and she couldn't go. And somebody called her collect just to see how she was doing, to find out that her grandmother had a massive heart attack in front of her. You know, those are people that are around me. They get it. They get when I say I don't feel well, or I don't know if I can do this. They have a word for me. You know, when I think about there's a lady here, then we've become close, and she's one of my sorority sisters. Her name is Nzinga Shaw. Nzinga works with the Recording Academy. But when it's so crazy, like she knows somebody from Flint. And my friend from Flint was like, you need to call Zing. Y'all need to talk. Ended up connecting. And she's just such a dynamic person, but so down to earth. And she talks about her mom transitioning. And she went on. So when I think about people who are in my circle, in my village, and people that I look to, these are all people that at some point in time, somewhere down the road, they have experienced some type of grief or loss, and they get it.
Right.
They understand it. They don't try to make me do something that I don't want to do. You know, and I'm very clear, and you know, I shared this before and I share it again. When I think about grief in terms of death, divorce, people moving away, you know, your kids transitioning. I told you my daughter going to high school. I'm like, what? Final stage of love. I feel that way because I love her that much. It's when they transition. Okay, now you're on the other side operating as an angel for me. Like I don't know how y'all. I don't know what you all do in the morning, but in the morning I release some angels to cover everybody. Me, the people at school, my kids, whoever. And I'm glad to know that my grandmother is in that army. Right. I'm glad because I knew who she knew. So I'm glad to know that I'm covered. I'm glad to know, you know, even through all of this, I have a friend that was Milan's equestrian coach. She was out there riding horses one day, fell off the horse, broke her collarbone. When they went in to repair her collarbone, she had cancer that spread all up and down her neck. And she was, Natalie Claire might have been mid-30s. Well, I got to see her in a different space and place. I was with her the day before she took her last breath. I was there with her, and she was very, you know, she was like, why me? You know, I've done it. I'm an attorney. I've given back. I love God, you know. And I had to explain to her, why not you? And I know that may sound selfish, but look at you have changed my daughter's life. She will always remember you. That's hard. That's hard when you have to look your peer in the face as they're transitioning. So I count it all joy. I'm excited about this next step, and, you know, really want to dig deeper in how the ultimate goal is. I would like to have my own research company where I specifically do research on Black culture and Black people, period. Because I want to reframe the narrative, and I want to tell our story from a different lens, you know. I want to tell our story of how we can now use in these groups that I will have, of how we can take those nuggets that our grandmothers, our great grandmothers gave us, and we can plant the seed, right? And we're just going to water it and watch it bloom. And so when our children go off, that's just another extension of them going off and planting those same seeds that they planted in us.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, it
makes
does.
perfect sense. It really does. This has been just phenomenal. This conversation has blessed me, even before we hit record. So I just, I can't thank you enough for joining us, for sharing your story with us.
You have to come back. You have to come back. Give us an update.
Yes, I will.
We have to have you like a co-host with us or something.
Yes,
like we gotta have you every 5 episodes or something.
Yeah, something. Definitely.
I am encouraged. I'm encouraged by your story. I'm encouraged by what you shared, and even the things you didn't share that we talked about. And I heard some things that came through clearly that resonated with me. The first was Jesus. We don't know who's watching. We don't know what they believe.
Right.
And we say it often, but somehow every single episode comes back to him. It comes back to him. I heard you say clearly therapy, right? And so we have some people who have also said therapy has been a blessing to them. And we have a woman coming on who's a therapist as well, who's going to share some things with us in the audience. But I heard that clear as day. It's like, go talk to someone if you need help.
Yeah, we helpers one to another. That's what the Bible tells us. Right. We are helpers one to another. And so if that's therapy, if that's your friend, if that's your grandma, if that's because our grandma was our counselor.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we are helpers one to another. God wants us to be together. He does. He wants us to be together, and he wants community, and the enemy would love to see that destroyed with grief and or dissension or offense. But sister, you are correct. It is coming through loud and clear every episode. You need Jesus.
At the end of the day.
You need Jesus. At the end of the day, we can't do nothing without him.
Right.
Can't even wake up.
Absolutely.
Can't even get out the bed. Can't even have a right mind. We cannot. We cannot. We got to quit trying to do this thing on our own. That is the north. That is the way. Absolutely. And so I don't know. I'm in agreement with I have just soaked up. I didn't even know. I was like, oh, I need to ask a question. Hold on. But I have just sat, at the feet of wisdom. You hear your grandmother when you speak. The anointing that is on your life. You can feel it through a Zoom call. God has anointed you for such a time as this.
Absolutely.
For the very women that you're researching, the very thing that you are researching, God has anointed you for a time such as this for these people. And I can't wait to see. You think this is something. I cannot wait for the manifestation, the full manifestation for the calling that's on your life. You can cut this part if you want to. I'm excited.
No,
I
can
see
that.
it.
Yes.
I receive it. It hasn't always been easy.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy because I miss her.
Yeah.
But I know she wouldn't have it any other way. Because that's who she was. I'm gonna tell you the truth. And listen, she would say, sit down. You ain't gonna like what I have to say. But I'm always tell you the truth. And that's what will set us free. Being honest, not behind all these titles and letters and all of that stuff. Because when you hurt, you hurt. And when you love, it conquers all,
Mm-hmm.
everything. And if I could give people just an inkling of the love she gave me,
Mm-hmm.
she loved me because she loved Christ. Like that's just
Yeah.
who. That's how she felt. That's she felt that was her calling. You know, she
Mm-hmm.
didn't. My grandmother worked on the line at Hurley Hospital in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
There isn't a doctor she came across. If you can ask Maddie Scott right now, she would say, "I love Mrs. Lee."
Mm-hmm.
There isn't. That was the lesson. The lesson was in love. The lesson was in grace. The lesson was in forgiveness. And with grief, if you are not careful, it will tear your family apart,
Yeah.
tear your friendships apart, because people are just feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to say, I'm sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sad because I miss them.
Mhm.
Or this is how so and so always did it. When I tell you, my mother and I used to stay into it. We stayed into it for a long time after my grandmother passed. And I would get so mad because my mother would go to my grandmother's house and she wouldn't answer the phone. And she would say, just call me on my cell phone. But I wasn't really mad at my mother. I
Mm-hmm.
was mad at the fact that in all my days of living, I've never called that house phone and somebody has never answered.
Yeah.
Ever. So just someone not answering the phone made me upset. So I had to learn how to deal with that. I had to learn it. So that means that you have to examine your own heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to examine where you are. I can't help anybody else if I can't help myself.
So true.
And sometimes we need a neutral party. We
Mm-hmm.
need, when I say therapy, my best friend, she been my best friend since second grade, first, second grade. So that's biased. She, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she might tell me, she might tell me the truth 90% of the time, but that other 10%, she gonna side with me, because
Yeah.
she's not me. So that's the thing about it. And what I love so much about my therapist always circles back to me. Ms. Waller, how was that helping you? How was
Mm-hmm.
that helping you on this healing journey? She's not
Mm-hmm.
talking about Milan. She's not talking about my parents. How does this benefit you? And oftentimes that's what we need. We need people that will, redirect our behavior,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
we're looking back at our own hearts. Like I said, and my sister and I laugh. My grandmother took everybody's secrets to the grave with her. Everybody.
It must be a granny thing
It
because our
is.
Let me
granny.
tell you,
Because my granny did the same thing.
Yes.
it is so, and I mean, she knew who was dating who, what was going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Absolutely.
Some of my sins, what was going on, and I didn't even know they was calling her. This was my grandmother. You think I'm lying? My grandmother used to call me when I was teaching in the classroom. Every day at noon, people would come in my class.
Mm.
And she would be down there praying. And I told her, we're not doing this. We're not getting ready to set up baby Bible study during lunchtime in my class. I mean, they would come down and they would say, Miss Waller, just ask, I know you're talking to your grandmother. Ask her to pray for me, for someone, to the point where I just started giving them the phone. And so she was always willing to help, willing to
Mm.
serve. And that's all I want to do. Whatever I can do to help people along this journey heal, because we've been through a lot. And so, in order for us, Nisha, you said this, in order for us to help these children on their
Mm-hmm.
healing journey, we have to be able to heal ourselves. I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to my daughter. She talking about she want to go to the bus stop. I was like, girl, she says a homeless lady, she's asking me for me. I said, just I'll talk to her. But I was telling her about all the stuff that I faced walking to the bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
And you never think about what you were exposed to, but we just
Mm-hmm.
thought it was normal.
Yeah.
We just, or it was normal for some. I'm like, girl, we were going through like protocols, her protocols for when they have the school shootings or whatever, and they have to go through and I said, you don't know what to do if somebody starts shooting? And she was like, no, what do you mean? That's not normal. But I'm thinking, going to basketball games, if something happens, you need to get down and run. But that's trauma. That isn't normal.
Right.
Yeah.
That isn't normal. So those things, and let me tell you how, and I had to talk to my therapist about that. I said, because I'm projected on my daughter what I thought that was my norm.
Right.
That's not her norm.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
So I have this expectation on her that she has never even been exposed to. So that's what I'm saying about being transparent. We have these unrealistic expectations of these children, and you know, of how we grew up, and we felt like, oh, well, it's fine, and I was good, and A, B, and C. However, these babies have been exposed, and their parents, and so, you know, as you are really pulling back the layers of your own heart, we have to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves and with our families to make sure that they're whole and they're healthy and they're healed. And I tell people all the time, Milan has her own therapist. Milan has been a therapist. I told you, my grandmother passed when she was in first grade. She has seen a therapist since first grade. Because I need a buffer. As a single parent, I need a buffer that can say, hey, you're trying to put something unrealistic on her. And again, that is a part of that journey, because if I want her to heal, and if I want to heal, I have to heal from some of these unspokens.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Does. Whew. We need a part 2.
We do.
We need a part 2. We need a part 2 just on that. The unspokens. Healing from what we don't talk about.
Oh my.
Healing from generational curses and the grief because of the generational curses.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying. That's it. See, part of this thing where my research starts off is during the sharecropping era. Where you had people that were just having children. Oh, y'all got to go and work. I told you, my great grandmother, my big mom told me, baby, we had babies and went back out in that field. So it was very much so, get over. You ain't have time to feel.
Right. Right.
Well, now think about if that was 2 generations for me, it's 3 generations for my daughter. All of this, you got to make sure the kitchen cleaned up before you go to bed. What if you tired? What if you are absolutely, is that really gonna make a difference?
Right. Right.
No, it's true. They don't
unspoken.
That's something. And Nisha, I don't know if you remember, even on the first episode where we really talked about Granny Pass, and you made a comment that can't fall apart right now. We got stuff to do. But that,
in the room that day, I said no.
Yeah.
She had just passed. I said no. We will do this with dignity.
Yeah.
We can't fall apart right now. Let's prep the body. Like it was just,
it was like,
and everybody just instantly stopped. It was like, yeah, literally, it's like time stood still. Yeah. And it was like, we will not cry right now. I mean,
and we stopped.
We did not.
We started to prepare her for them to come and pick her up, because we did not want anything but the best for her. Even in that moment of death, there was dignity. It had to be dignified. And if that's not posturing.
Yeah. It was the epitome of posturing.
Epitome of it in that moment. Can't even, she just took her last breath. I had my finger on her wrist, feeling her pulse, and then Nisha was like, no. And we stopped and we went into what she taught us to do, what we had watched her do with our loved ones before. And it's, woo.
That's a learned behavior. So how do you unlearn those behaviors? And that's what I'm saying. How do I teach? Because I told you my grandmother was big on, you're going to serve God, you're going to be a lady, mother, right? So how do you do those things? Because there's a space in place where those things are relevant.
Mhm.
But what happens when it becomes real?
Mm-hmm.
So your grandmother is just taking her last breath, and we're standing there, and we can't really mourn because we want to make sure when people come to pick her up, she's together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We want it to look a certain way.
Yeah,
Correct.
Appearance.
appearance.
Absolutely.
Appearance. Yeah.
And so there's a way that those things, we can do those same things, but we can have healthy boundaries in understanding that preparation is so important.
Mm-hmm.
But being people first
Yeah.
ranks over that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it just shows up different. When I can
Mm-hmm.
think about, I didn't see my grandmother. My sister went to the hospital, my family, everybody, because it just wasn't real to me. So I wasn't coming to Flint to look at her. That I'm not doing that. Everybody did that. So when I got there, when I saw her, I will never forget going to Moons, and I was trying to close the casket. Y'all not gonna get ready to sit up here and look at her like this.
Mm-hmm.
And my
Mm-hmm.
mother was like, "You cannot, you can't."
Mm-hmm.
Like you cannot. Everybody, it was time for everybody to go.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, because of that, because I felt like it was such a vulnerable moment, and I'm like, people are looking at her. Y'all gonna let them look at her like this? And my uncle just had to leave because he knew where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you how that in pivoting in what happened with my grandmother, it has opened up the conversation with my mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
is this going to look like for you? My mother is like, I want a long service, and I want just let people get up there and talk. I said, ma'am, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And it opens up the conversation. And my mom, believe it or not, she had to hear my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Going back to what I said earlier about hearing the person's heart, not just their words. I understand what you want, but I want you to know that you are my mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You are my mother. There's no woman on this earth that I love more than you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, in this space and place, although I know what you want, I want you to understand how our hearts are going to feel in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed the conversation because she got to understand how much I loved her just while she's here having and it's okay to
Yeah.
have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Because with this situation, I was like, okay, you know how you felt. So let's talk about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed the conversation, it's changed the dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
it's changed the response, how we're going to interact with one another. But most of all, again, it allowed her to see the love.
Mm-hmm.
I love you this much. I love you. I know I love you this much. This is how I want to feel in this moment. And this is how, while you're here, I want you to know how I feel about you. So can we do it a different way? That's kind of how you change the conversation. You pivot from some of those old traditions and behaviors, because if not, they'll have you. It's called delayed grief.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be a year from now. I have a cousin that my grandmother has been, she's transitioned 7 years. It's been 7 years. He called me earlier this year, just broke down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he just kind of kept it moving. And again, men kind of deal with things differently. And my grandmother was big on, I ain't gonna have no playboys in my family. Y'all gonna get married. That was her big thing. And he said, what would Granny say?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Y'all talk too. What would she say?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. Oh, being vulnerable enough to open the conversation up,
Mm-hmm.
look at what is posturing and what's just feeling, because some of those traditions, they're just in us.
Yeah.
But there's another conversation when we start talking about unspoken. My my father is a Baptist preacher and my grandmother was a Pentecostal mother.
Mm.
So one of the things that really gets people, and you all can cut this however you want, it when I start talking about spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't like that. You got some people that feel like, until the Lord calls us on, and my thing is, I don't want you to be so heavenly bound that you're no earthly good. Spiritually, people will come on your mind and you won't call them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so funny though, because I don't know. I think sometimes we project like how we feel on others too, right? So I remember in the thick of this thing, I ain't want to talk to nobody. Don't call me. I don't got nothing good to say to you. All I want to talk about is my grandmother. So if you don't want to talk to me about that, don't call me. And I remember like being angry. I think about it now and that feeling still rides up in me, that anger, right? And so sometimes I'll be like, if to your point, somebody will cross my mind and I'll be like, man, maybe I should just pray for them, instead of reaching out because I'm thinking they probably in the space I was in, but you can't assume that, right? You got to do, I feel like we have discernment. I know I do. And sometimes I'll second guess what I know the Lord is telling me to do because I'm thinking about where I was at. But it's not about where I was at. It's about what I feel I'm supposed to do in that moment. And that might be a call, that might be that might be a text, that might be, just dropping by if they're in the same area as me. And I just think we have to be okay with being a little bit uncomfortable in these situations, not knowing everything, not knowing how to do it, but just what do you need me to do? Sometimes
how about it's not for you to know?
What are
it's not for you to know.
It's not for you to know. You don't, because here's the thing.
That's good.
Because you're describing the grief cycle. That's what you're describing. So anger is part of that, when we're all trying to figure it out and it's like, okay, this just happened. Like what happens to our family? For a long time, I'm like, God, in all transparency, this might be the edit, but whether you keep it out, this is how I felt. It's a whole lot of people on this earth you could have took, right?
Right, my granny.
What made you take this one?
Yeah, my granny, my Uncle D, my mentor, all three of them, I was like, really? That's what we doing? I was mad.
Yes. And so you go through that, but that's on that other space, that other side of it, whereas you have people that will say, hey, what's going on, Keisha? And even if you're like, look, I ain't having it today. I ain't feeling it today. It's okay. I was just calling to let you know I love you.
Yeah. That was my Friday, like with work and just being in the space that I was in. I was, asked to come somewhere and I was like, no. And I said no to somebody I shouldn't say no to, this person, and you don't say no to this person, and so I'm like, no, I'm angry today. And I mean that, and that, like, as a matter of fact, that's it, and I didn't go. I didn't show up. And I was telling myself I'm justifying myself, but and I'm justifying. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm protecting my peace. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But there is a way. There's a way to do things, and I probably misstepped that one. But the sentiment was the same. I can't be in that space because I'm in this space, and I don't want to bring this into that space, because of how I'm feeling and what I'm anticipating I'm going to see or hear in that space. I'm not in the place to receive it. And
but that's real.
And that's
those
real,
are
and that's my
boundaries.
truth. Yeah.
Those are called boundaries. And I was just telling someone this the other day. There's a difference in between facts and truth. And your truth may have been, I'm just in this space and place. It ain't it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So until I can figure out, where I need to be, let me stay over here. Right. And y'all can get somebody else to do it. And somebody else will come. And that's called a boundary. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong saying no, because it then goes back to that whole learned behavior of that superwoman. Let me do everything for everybody except for myself, you know, and let me show up for them when you ain't even showing up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That part.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm usually in these conversations saying, I'm not the expert, but we clearly have an expert on the call today.
Yes.
So I'll let you wrap the show up, Miss Wallace. What would you like the closing remarks to be for this episode?
In closing, I will say this again. Show up for yourself and remember, grief is the final act of love.
So good. Thank y'all for joining us. We will see you next week.